They are the Pillars of the Kings, one of the greatest structural accomplishments in the history of Middle-earth. Their appearance is striking, accounting for one of the most awe-inspiring moments in the film adaptations of The Lord of the Rings. Yet the meaning behind them was one of significance to Gondor and its enemies. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the Argonath. To understand the full significance of the Argonath, we must first go back to the days of the kings of Gondor. Specifically, we go to the reign of King Calmacil. Having taken the throne at an old age, Calmacil makes his son merlkir regent of his kingdom, and throughout the 1240s of the Third Age, merlkir's greatest challenge comes from the north. For during the rule of his uncle, King Narmacil I, Easterlings had resumed their attacks against Gondor. Worse yet, it was discovered that not all of the Northmen in the region of Rhovanion were loyal to Gondor, and some would go so far as to join the Easterlings out of greed. Thus, after he comes to power, merlkir makes preparations to address this persistent threat, one that has at least twice before plagued Gondor. Finally, in 1248, merlkir leads a great force and destroys every Easterling camp from Rhovanion to the Sea of Rhûn, driving back the Easterlings to their own lands. So great was this victory that the Easterlings would not dare to assault Gondor for over 600 years. In honor of his triumph, merlkir takes the name Romendacil II, becoming the second king of Gondor to be known as East Victor. On his way back to Gondor, Romendacil fortifies the western shore of the Anduin as far as the inflow of the Limelight, and he forbids any stranger to pass down the river beyond the Emyn Muil. Thus, it is Romendacil who sees built two great towering figures to stand at the entrance to the lake of Nenhithoel. They are enormous carvings of stone, made in the likeness of the great kings who founded their kingdom, the brothers Isildur and Anarion. The figures stand facing north, each with an axe in their right hand, and their left hand is held aloft in a gesture of defiance to the enemies of Gondor. Romendacil would go on to strengthen Gondor's alliance with the Northmen, taking many of them into his service, and some would go on to have high ranks in his armies. And just 2 years after his great victory over the Easterlings, Romendacil sends his son Valakar to a great leader among the Northmen, Vidugavia. Valakar would act as Gondor's ambassador among the Northmen, and would even go on to marry Vidugavia's daughter, Vidumavi. But how could such an incredible construction as the Argonath occur? As we see time and again, the Gondorians, descendants of Numenor, were capable of incredible feats. Not only did they create the Argonath, but they had earlier built their great cities of Minas Tirith, Minas Ithil, and Osgiliath, the Tower of Orthanc at Isengard, and the fortress that would later be known as Helm's Deep. Tolkien himself would say in a letter, the Numenorians of Gondor were proud, peculiar, and archaic, and I think are best pictured in, say, Egyptian terms. In many ways, they resembled Egyptians, the love of and power to construct the gigantic and massive, and in their great interest in ancestry and in tombs. In the Argonath, we not only see this Egyptian-like ability to build massive structures, but also their fondness for ancestry in the depiction of their first kings. And in their Lord of the Rings Reader's Companion, Tolkien scholars Hammond and Skull would point out that there are some Egyptian statues with a striking resemblance to the Argonath, specifically mentioning the Colossi of Memnon, two statues depicting Amenhotep III, a pharaoh from the 14th century BC. And while we don't get an exact height for the Argonath, it is perhaps worth noting the Colossi are 60 feet or 18 meters tall. For well over 1700 years, the Argonath would stand, though the line of the kings, the line of Anarion, would fall, though the realm of Gondor would shrink and the kingdom would wane. The Argonath still stand as an image of the glory of Gondor. We would see them most notably when the Fellowship of the Ring sails down the Anduin River on February 25th, 3019. Frodo, peering forward, saw in the distance two great rocks approaching. Like great pinnacles or pillars of stone they seemed. Tall and sheer and ominous they stood upon either side of the stream. A narrow gap appeared between them, and the river swept the boats towards it. "Behold the Argonath, the pillars of the kings," cried Aragorn. "We shall pass them soon. Keep the boats in line, and as far apart as you can. Hold the middle of the stream." As Frodo was borne towards them, the great pillars rose like towers to meet him. Giants they seemed to him, vast gray figures, silent but threatening. Then he saw that they were indeed shaped and fashioned. The craft and power of old had wrought upon them, and still they preserved through the suns and rains and forgotten years the mighty likenesses in which they had been hewn. Upon great pedestals founded in the deep waters stood two great kings of stone. Still with blurred eyes and crannied brows they frowned upon the north. The left hand of each was raised palm outwards in gesture of warning. In each right hand there was an axe. Upon each head there was a crumbling helm and crown. Great power and majesty they still wore, the silent wardens of a long-vanished kingdom. Awe and fear fell upon Frodo, and he cowered down, shutting his eyes and not daring to look up as the boat drew near. Even Boromir bowed his head as the boats whirled by, frail and fleeting as little leaves, under the enduring shadow of the sentinels of Númenor. So they passed into the dark chasm of the gates. Sheer rose the dreadful cliffs to unguessed heights on either side. Far off was the dim sky. The black waters roared and echoed, and a wind screamed over them. Frodo, crouching over his knees, heard Sam in front, muttering and groaning. "What a place! What a horrible place! Just let me out of this boat and I'll never wet my toes in a puddle again, let alone a river." "Fear not," said a strange voice behind him. Frodo turned and saw Strider, and yet not Strider, for the weather-worn ranger was no longer there. In the stern sat Aragorn, son of Arathorn, proud and erect. Guiding the boat with skillful strokes, his hood was cast back, and his dark hair was blowing in the wind. A light was in his eyes. A king returning from exile to his own land. "Fear not," he said. "Long have I desired to look upon the likenesses of Isildur and Anarion, my sires of old. Under their shadow Elisar, the elf-stone son of Arathorn of the house of Valendil, Isildur's son, heir of Elendil, has naught to dread." Thus would the heir of Isildur look upon the faces of his sires of old. Despite all his travels over his 87 years of life, Aragorn had never before seen the faces of the Argonath. This great structure, whose name means royal stones, would presumably live on in the days of the Fourth Age to come, the days of King Aragorn Elisar. And while they may no longer mark the northern border of the kingdom, they would still serve as a warning for all who may wish harm to Gondor. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.